All right.
Before we get started into this week's episode, as always, we'd like to shout out our sponsors for this podcast. It is
Ohio Humanities and the Community Foundation of the Mahoning Valley have generously sponsored this first season.
Thank you so very much for your support, and thanks for the listeners.
So on this week's episode, we meet with Roger Peterson to talk about Center Brook Manor, North Bloomfield, the Underground Railroad, a little bit about the Brownwood Estate. One of the things that I really enjoyed about this episode, and it probably comes across a little bit too heavy-handed, is how appreciative I am to Roger and his family about how much time, energy, and effort that they have put into revitalizing and stabilizing this house for future generations. So I sort of wanted to get your opinion on how much I gush over Roger in this episode. But at the same time, I really just wanted to get your thoughts and opinions on like the work they've done for not only their family, but this, not only North Bloomfield, but Trumbull County as a whole.
I completely agree. So I started at the Historical Society a couple of years before Roger bought Center Brook, and had always looked at that building just with awe. Like, it was so beautiful, and the story was so great. And like, I think a lot of us that are involved in the history community were just looking at that house like, what's going to happen, right? And when Roger bought it, and I first met him, and I just heard what he wanted to do and his plans, you know, it's just so moving. And there's so many people in Trumbull County, and I think this is just, you know, sort of a part of humanity in some ways, that a lot of people love historic preservation. A lot of people aren't able or aren't willing to put the time and energy and effort to do something like he's doing. And, you know, he works a full-time job, he has kids, he has a full life outside of Center Brook, and the fact that he is willing to put so much time and effort dedicated into that space is just so, I don't know, I just find it very inspiring. I mean, I don't know what else to say.
We both feel the same way, I think, about Roger and his time, and just the sacrifices his family's made too. There are days and times where he wasn't with Heather or his kids in an effort to restabilize this house and save it. So from Megan and myself, thank you, Roger. And the Peterson family.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I do want to make a caveat before we go into Roger's interview that there was landscaping happening at the Edwards house where we record the episodes, and you may hear bits of a weed whacker in the background. We apologize for that. That was not planned. No. And we tried to cut out as much of it as we could, but there are some parts that you'll hear a weed whacker in the background. So bear with us.
Yeah, and if there's any sort of hesitation or stumbling around, it's in part because we're like, is this ever going to end?
I know.
And that was always in our background.
Why is it so loud?
Why is it so loud? Yeah. Turns out it's pretty loud in the 1807 house.
Right, exactly.
One of the other things, not only what Roger's done in the family, but the stories, you mentioned it just briefly now, the stories of the freedom seekers that traveled through that house. Now, we don't know all their names or anything like that, but just how impactful and important that is, not only for Trumbull County, but we just got through with the meeting for America 250, and how emblematic Center Brook is to the larger story of our nation really stuck out to me throughout this conversation.
I completely agree with that too. There's something about Center Brook and all of the people that live there, and it's just, they're such powerful stories. It's really nice to see a house that can tell so much about our history in the hands of somebody who really cares and appreciates that.
Yeah, and I think that's true. Like everybody that's owned or like lived in that house,
Absolutely.
Especially Roger sees it that way too. One of the things that we talk about is the particular fervor for abolitionist movement. We'll edit that, for abolitionist movement in Trumbull County, but specifically North Bloomfield. There couldn't be that many people in North Bloomfield, and there were 3 sites on the Underground Railroad in North Bloomfield in the early part of the 20th century, which is just remarkable.
And we don't talk much in this interview about what they call the road to freedom. But going up Route 45, we don't just have North Bloomfield, but going north to Lake Erie, and then of course to Canada, there's a whole bunch of houses along that trail. So if you're ever interested in taking a drive up Route 45 north through Ashtabula County, I highly recommend it. It's a really beautiful drive, and it's also very, very poignant to just have that experience.
Yeah. And with that, we just want to say welcome, Roger, and thanks for listening.
I'm going to read Roger's bio. He sent it as a list of bullet points, and I think it encapsulates Roger pretty well. So here we go. Roger lives in North Bloomfield with wife and kids. He married his wife Heather in 1997. He enjoys cats, gardening, long walks in the woods after rain, and catching fireflies. has been known to consume chicken wings until violently ill. He's a fourth-generation Peterson in North Bloomfield, 19 years township trustee, 33 years fire department member, 18 years as a paramedic, works as the Geauga County Emergency Management Director, and he loves history and architecture. And without further ado, welcome Roger.
Welcome, Roger.
Thank you for having me.
We're so excited to talk to you. I think a lot of people who drive around Trumbull County who appreciate architecture, whoever sees your building would just be absolutely in awe and just like, oh my gosh, that's, top 5 at least on the best architecture and houses throughout Trumbull County.
I'm top 2 for me. It's an amazing place, Roger. It's an amazing place.
Well, I appreciate it. It's been an awful lot of work.
Yeah. I'm sure. Well, can you give us a bit of background just to start off about how you came to own Center Brook Manor?
So we picked up Center Brook in the fall of 2018. The older couple that had lived there had passed on, and the family had made the decision to make it available for purchase to my wife and I. It's not something that we were really set out looking for. It was just something that we kind of stumbled into, but it obviously was just meant to be. The amount of work and clean up and refurbish that we've had to do has been crazy, and I can't believe we've been at it for almost 6 years now.
I mean, did you have a background in this kind of work, in repairing houses, in any kind of carpentry before you went into this? Or is this just like a jump in and see how it goes kind of experience?
So I'm one of those guys that can do a little bit of everything, whether it be working on mechanical things or working on houses. So I kind of grew up learning a little bit about plumbing, a little bit more about electric, and a lot about carpentry. And the things that I was unsure of or not comfortable with, I did a lot of reading, and I learned what the electrical standards were, and I learned why you do things structurally and how to do different assessments. So it was quite a learning curve that I took upon myself. By no means was I a contractor, or this was not something I did even as a side business.
I remember one of the first times I talked to you about the house, you told me a story about all of the cats that were living inside.
So there was 14 cats and 5 litter boxes, and it was a little bit of work to rehome all the animals and to get the things associated with 14 cats in a house mitigated. It was a long road, but we were able to do it. And I think when you walk in the house now, you don't even catch a whiff or any indication at all that there was ever that many cats and raccoons. There was a basement full of raccoons.
That's like the second time this month I've heard of a house full of raccoons.
Right.
So that's, one of them I was trying to buy. It's okay. One of the other questions I had for you is, so to follow up on Megan, you also talked about everything, lawnmowers being left where they laid in the yard, bowling balls, etc. It wasn't just the interior, it was the entire property that just needed work.
So there's 5 acres, and it is just the result of a very elderly couple probably just trying their best to maintain what they could on their fixed income. And the farther you got back on the property, the longer things had been there, whether it be lawnmowers or junk or stones or bowling balls. The in-ground swimming pool, half of it was full of shingles from the roof, which probably was a necessity because they weren't swimming in the pool, obviously. And if the contractor could just dump the shingles there, they didn't have to pay to have it removed. So I think just those are the kind of things that we ran into.
So who built the house and when?
So we found that the tax record shows that the house was occupied in 1845. It was built for the wedding of Charles and Julia Brown, according to family notes. Charles's father was Ephraim Brown, who lived across the street, and Julia's father was Judge King from Warren, Ohio. We believe that it was started sometime in 1842, which is about when they got married, and it would have just taken 2 solid years to get that house built, just using hand tools and milling the lumber on site.
Can you talk a little bit more about the building of the actual Center Brook Manor? Like what techniques were used, what architectural design there was?
So the house itself is a Gothic revival. One of the amazing factors of it is the stacked plank construction walls. All the interior walls are 1x4, stacked one on top of the other and face nailed. And the exterior walls are 1x6, stacked one on top of the other, with an additional 1-inch vertical siding put on it. If you go up in the attic, all the way to the very peak of one of the front is a little small 1x4 that was just skinnied right in there because they stacked it all the way to the top. The house is basically designed off of an Andrew Downing design. If you go through his books, it was called a Gothic cottage, which I believe is why even on the National Registry it's referred to as the Charles Brown Cottage, even though it's over 6,000 square feet.
That's one large cottage.
And what did Brown do that allowed him to build this house? Can you give us a little background in terms of who he was and his sort of place in Trumbull County at the time?
So at the time, Charles co-owned a hardware business out of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. He was also a farmer. He was also a very dedicated church member. The thing about Charles, his father, Ephraim, was basically the original settler owner of North Bloomfield. So at one time, all 25 square miles of Bloomfield belonged to Charles's family. Julia's father owned most of North Akron, and then he was also a president of, I believe it was the Ohio and Erie Canal. So Judge King was very wealthy. The Brown family was wealthy. And I believe a lot of this money probably would have come from both of the fathers, as just my own suspicion.
When you're talking about the history of the house and you invite tour groups in or families in to look at it, what story do you like to tell them about the Brown family, about the house, about its significance?
So something significant about the Brown family as well as Julia King's family was they were both very dedicated abolitionists. If you go into Warren's Monument, Veterans Park, there's a plaque dedicated to Julia's father. One of the interesting things we found in an article in the Liberator newspaper, I believe it was 1857, where William Wells Brown visited Center Brook, stayed, and then also spoke at the churches. William Wells Brown was an escaped slave who ended up getting his freedom purchased, and he was also the very first black published author. To have somebody of that caliber who was going around speaking about the evils of slavery from an experienced person who was a slave and actually stayed at Center Brook, I think is a pretty significant event.
Absolutely. And the house itself was on the Underground Railroad, is that right?
Yes. So there were 3 sites in Bloomfield that have documentation from being on the Underground Railroad. One was Brownwood, across the street where Ephraim lived. One was Center Brook, where Ephraim's son lived. And the other was, it was called the Swamp Hut. And it was about a mile east in the Tamarack Swamp on property that Ephraim Brown owned. All 3 locations had received different escaped slaves at different times.
Can you talk a little bit about North Bloomfield and 1840s, 1880s, 3 locations that were on the Underground Railroad? That seems to be quite significant. There were roughly about 14 to 16 in our area in Trumbull County. So 3 of them to be in North Bloomfield. What was the population like? What was the political tenor at the time like for North Bloomfield?
So the very first North Bloomfield documentation is in, I believe it's in the Harriet Upton book from 1823. She references September of 1823. And it was when the Brown family spotted slaves going north on State Route 45 toward Lake Erie. And the Brown family intercepted them and hid them from the Virginian slave hunters that were coming and actually came into town later that day. So Bloomfield was a hotbed of abolitionist activity. There was a lot of references to Bloomfield in various abolitionist publications that I've read, and there's also an interesting note that there was even a letter to the editor that talks about how a Copperhead newspaper received nearly no circulation to the residents of North Bloomfield.
Yeah.
Wow.
So the Browns were not the only well-known or significant family that lived in that house, though.
Right. So after the Browns, after Charles and Julia had lived there, they had later sold it to Julia's brother, Lester King, who took over the property about 1860 and was there until about 1885. Lester King was a lieutenant in the 7th Ohio. He was a recruiter. And as you go through the itinerary of the 7th Ohio, you'll see there's more than one occasion where Lieutenant King was mentioned by name at significant battles when he was doing some very admirable work as a soldier, leading troops into battle. There was even the one reference to 4 different color bearers had been shot. King was the 5th one and picked up the flag and continued the charge.
Wow.
So, everything with Center Brook seems to have some sort of civil justice tie to it, whether it was escaping slaves and harboring them, whether it was the Civil War. The third owner was also in the Civil War. He was a corporal. He was also Justice of the Peace. So the building held a very important part of history for not just North Bloomfield, but really for the state of Ohio.
I want to ask you, because before you owned Center Brook, you were president of the North Bloomfield Historical Society. So this is certainly something, even before owning the house, that has been interesting to you and has been a part of your life. Can you talk about that a little bit? What made you get interested in history to begin with?
I think my family is what led me to develop my interest in history. What I mean by that is the Peterson family got off the boat from Sweden and basically made their stop in North Bloomfield. I was a Bloomfield graduate. My father was. My grandfather was. My great-grandfather literally drove the school wagon taking kids to the school.
Wow.
So we have a very long history. I found out that more that I did on my family research, it just went hand in hand with Bloomfield research.
Why did they pick North Bloomfield? Do you know?
And when was it?
Oh, yeah, good question.
So they came over to Bloomfield approximately 1874. I think they came to Bloomfield because it was economical. The community was not developed well. I don't want to say it wasn't developed well. I want to say it was not like moving into Cleveland or Warren. Land was inexpensive, and they could farm their 50 acres and make a living at it.
Okay, so we talked a little bit about your family background, the reasons why they came to North Bloomfield, and you talked a little bit about buying Center Brook, but I know this was a decision between you and wife Heather that took some time, right?
So she wasn't convinced at first. When I took her through the house, I actually did not know we were going to be purchasing it. I took her through it because I had told her that the house was going to be going up for sale, and I really didn't know when the next time, if ever, she would ever be able to see the inside of Center Brook. It was still full. It still had cats. It was a mess. The backyard did not exist. The front yard didn't exist, and you could not drive in the driveway without trees touching both sides of your car at the same time. When I told my wife that I thought this was a good idea, she just said, "I'm not really sure that it's a good idea, but I'll trust you on this." Then I just asked her not to come up for many months because just let me clean it out.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
It's a good game plan.
That was a good game plan. It was quite the leap.
It was.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk a little bit more about the house across the street from you? I know that's not what this episode is about, but can we talk a little bit about the architecture of that house and similarly the family? I know it's the Brown family, but what significance does that family have to Trumbull County and to the state of Ohio?
So the house across the street is Brownwood. The original portion of Brownwood was built in 1820, and it was quite a Federalist home. I think that Ephraim Brown did that knowing that anybody that wanted to buy land in Bloomfield was going to come to his home. I think it was just an amazing piece of architecture that folks could come up and say, "I'd like to buy 100 acres," and you would not believe the beautiful home next to the amazing creek, next to the spring-fed pond, and the outbuildings and the amazing garden that was there. So I think Ephraim did it as a personal taste, but also as a sales. I don't want to say propaganda, but as a point of sale. Ephraim served in the Ohio Senate for 2 terms. Read some of his original letters that talks about him riding his horse down to Columbus to the State House, which you think about it, and obviously they would have to ride a horse, but then you think about it and you're like, that's 180 miles on horseback.
I'm good. Trip. I'm not doing that.
Yeah,
I'm not doing
that's crazy.
Right.
So, but Ephraim did a very nice job of promoting the community to get people to purchase. The people that settled in Bloomfield were not necessarily just the common horse farmers. They were the up and comings. They were the men of stature, the doctors and the attorneys. So I think he did a very good job of early marketing for North Bloomfield.
One of the things that we haven't talked about yet are the hiding spaces for freedom seekers throughout Center Brook. Can you talk a little bit about where those are located? Yeah, I guess where they were located is a good place to start.
So there's 2 places in Center Brook that could have been used for concealment. The one in the back of the house is in the kitchen, and it's a cabinet that has a false back. Once you get up and inside, you had to pull a string to release the cabinet back. You could go inside of it and then close it. You had no idea that it was even there. The other spot is under the stairs. You would have thought that it would have been a basement steps, but it's not. It's a closet under the steps, and then inside that closet, there's a false back. You can open that up and easily seat multiple people under there. When I have some of the school kids, the history classes, the homeschool groups come in, we like to allow the kids to sit in that spot. I talk to them about the black laws of the 1850s, the bloodhound laws. What did it mean to be a runaway slave? What did it mean if your master caught you? And what would happen to you as an escaping slave, and what would happen to the people that owned the home and the property. So those 2 spots, it's interesting. These kids are able to sit while learning about the Underground Railroad in a house that was used on the Underground Railroad in a space that could have been used to conceal during the Underground Railroad. So it's just part of the desire to make history real to these kids, that history is not about dead people, dead places, and dead things. These were real people that took real risks, that put their money where their mouth was. They were the people that were standing up for what was right, even if they were the only ones standing.
When you first bought the house, when you first took that plunge, did you know then that you wanted to use the house for public education, to get field trips through, to open it up to the community? Or did you think just first steps first, I just want to try to save this house?
So really it was a first step first. It was so extraordinarily overwhelming that we couldn't even put together a renovation plan until we had gotten rid of the cats and the raccoons in the basement and fixed the windows that were broken out. And we had whole sections of roof that were missing shingles. There were 7 5-gallon buckets on the second floor catching water. There was a foundation that was bad in the back. So it was a very large project just to get your thumb on before you could even decide, what on earth do we do with this? Or what do we do?
Do you have a favorite room?
So my favorite room, this is going to sound odd, but it is an upstairs bedroom that's in the corner of the house. It's not the master bedroom. It's just a cozy little bedroom with a window seat in one of the box bay windows. It just has the best character because of the architecture and the slopes of the ceiling. It's not a room that we've restored yet, but it's going to be one of the next rooms because I just love that little room. There's so much character to it.
Do you want to talk about plans that you have for the building?
So we have a couple different directions that we're going. First and foremost, we want to be able to maintain the home and keep it open for public tours and learning and living history events. I want to make sure that people learn about our history and why it was important and why it's important that we don't repeat it. We also want to try to make the property self-sufficient. We have just been pouring so much money into it that at some point we've got to get it self-sufficient, whether it's through donation or renting a space for an event, or not really sure what that looks like yet. But we've got to keep it open. We've got to make it self-sufficient, and we have no plans on ever living up there, because using it as a residence kind of goes contrary to what we've been doing and what we want to do and the outreach that we want to have done.
When you drive up to Center Brook, do you think about, I imagine you think about it all, right? You think about the stories of the people that live there, it being on the Underground Railroad, you think about all those things, but do you think about the time and energy and effort that you've put into it and your family's put into this to revive this story for the community? Because that's, I think, what I would think about, and what I want people to take away from this is how much energy your family and yourself specifically have put into reviving this space.
I don't think anybody will ever have a full appreciation of the amount of work or the time or the hours or the late night work sessions that have been put in up there. Sometimes I'll just sit on the stone steps in the front of the house by the front door and just consider the people that walked over that threshold and the important decisions and the important life-changing discussions that had occurred in the house. When you weigh the gravity of the importance of that home, it kind of revitalizes you. And one of my favorite things to do when some of the homeschool kids come over is we would print out papers and it would spell out, this place is important. And they would each hold a paper and they would have their photo taken from the front step. Just as this place is important. It's important to them. It's important to us. If we don't make it important to others, I think we run the risk of it someday going away.
Do you have a favorite person that lived in the house that you like researching the most, or somebody that you've just been really drawn to in the course of researching the property?
One of my favorites would have to be John McAdoo. He was the third owner. He was a corporal in the Civil War, but he was also Justice of the Peace. In 1900, there was a murder that occurred in the center of Bloomfield, and it was witnessed by the entire town because it was actually a festival. So this out-of-towner shot a very well-known young farmer, and the entire community who was up there seen it, and they were getting rope because they were going to hang this man in the center of our community from one of the elm trees. John McAdoo walked into the center of the crowd, took the man, and said he will stand trial for what he has done. He walked him out of the crowd, and he walked him into the front door of the hotel. He called the Trumbull County Sheriff and Warren at the jail and said, get the jail ready because I'm bringing somebody in. He walked him right out the back door, got in the stable, put him on a horse, and took him into Warren, probably saving his life, because there's no doubt that the high emotion and the anger in the community, he would have been strung up. It would have been a black eye for Bloomfield for a very long time. The fact that this man, John McAdoo, had the fortitude, again, to do what was right, even if nobody else agreed with him. He just walked right into this crowd. He diffused it. He took the man out and got him to jail. He was later arrested, and then he was sentenced to, I believe, 8 years. That's probably one of my favorite. I just love it when you find out that people were doing the right thing.
I think this maybe ties into the central theme that I finally am realizing about this podcast, which is that our first episode was with Gary and Donna Moss, and they talked about the impact of Kinsman, right? And we've had guests on to talk about McKinley and Niles, and now you're talking about the Brown family in North Bloomfield. And I think there is something particular about the small townships, counties, small townships and little cities, and even Warren itself, that influences who people are in a way that carries over. And I think it has something to do with what's in the water. I don't know if there's a question to be asked there, but I think it's really interesting that there's this thread throughout these various stories in our community that tie back to what you were just saying about people in the end sort of just doing what they felt was right. And it all stems from like where they were brought up and the things that they had around them. And I think you sort of continue that on, right?
I hope so. I hope when we are long gone, I hope that the community can look back and say, hey, they did some good things, and thankfully they stepped forward, because if not, that Center Brook would have been turned into a duplex with vinyl siding on it. And this is really a gem, and I'm really glad. And I know it was a lot of hard work for them, but I really hope I really hope that it pays off someday, that we leave the place better than we found it, and that we can make a long impression and bring that sense of pride of our own history out to these next generations.
Well said.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a better way of ending that, but I'm going to ask you about the staircase. It's supposed to face the front door, right? And it faces your back door.
So what's very common in the Andrew Downing designs, and really all the designs of that era, was the staircase would face the front door. And what's unique is this staircase faces the rear door. It's just a really intriguing design. When you walk into the front door, the staircase is behind a hallway door. So if that hall door is shut, you don't even see the staircase there. So it's just an intriguing design.
Are there any other stories about Center Brook, other aspects of the renovation, anything we've missed that you'd want to make sure gets in the podcast?
So one of my goals for next year is we want to put up a small history building, because we obtained a Civil War collection from a local reenactor collector. We want to get that put together, and we want to put it in its own dedicated building so that when kids come to learn about Center Brook, we can also teach them a little bit about Civil War. And the other thing that I want to do is I want to document where some of the outside fixtures were at on the farm, such as where was the ice house. When I was doing some septic line repair, I stumbled onto what was a cistern. So I want to open that cistern up, and I want to pump it out and clean it out and see if there's any artifacts at the bottom, any kind of archaeological surveys. But we really want to someday return the property to what it would have looked like in the 1850s. We want to put up an ice house, even if it's just empty. We want to put an ice house.
You're not going to put ice in there?
We might put ice.
Okay.
We might have an old-fashioned ice cutting one day.
Cool.
But no, that's one of the things that we really want to do.
there.
Right. Same.
So
Yeah.
That would be really cool.
Yeah, that'd be very cool. What events do you have coming up?
So this October, the first weekend in October, we're doing a Civil War encampment and a hospital. And the hospital is really kind of a unique thing to our area, because this group has performed this at Gettysburg. So they are going to be turning the inside of Center Brook into a Civil War hospital, just like the Army of the Potomac was camped outside. It's going to be a candlelit tour. They're going to be doing surgeries by candlelight, theatrical, of course. There'll be the recovery room. They'll have apothecary. They'll have the U.S. Sanitary Commission. So there'll be an encampment. The artillery will be there. We're really excited about that.
Very cool.
Really excited. We formed a 501c3, and we're just now getting a board put together. And then eventually I want the 501c3 to take over the Civil War Museum, as well as possibly be the manager of the property.
Can you tell people how much it's going to cost for them to attend the Civil War reenactment?
So if you want to go to the Civil War Hospital, you'll have to go online and purchase tickets through our website. Tickets, I believe, are $13.50. It's going to be a half-hour, 45-minute candle tour. So, when you're looking for something to do with the family this October, and it doesn't involve a haunted house, well, this is a big house that can be kind of creepy. So that'll be a close lineup, and I'm not even sure if we'll have pumpkin spice there.
Okay. We also have Ghost Walk. That's happening too. But yeah, but that's cool. Thanks, Roger. I don't know if I have any other questions other than thank you for doing this. And not only this podcast, but what you've done for North Bloomfield and Trumbull County. Anybody that knows you or has been there can attest to its value.
I appreciate it. All right.
Bye, Roger.
Thank you.
This week's object highlight is a photograph of Center Brook Manor taken in 2000. It's one of the only photographs or objects in our collection about Center Brook, but this one in particular is quite striking. It's taken at an angle right off Route 45. The leaves are green. The house is painted white and black. And it just gives you a real sense of the majesty of Center Brook Manor. And that's the reason I really wanted to highlight it for today's episode. And in addition, about a year ago, the Trumbull County Historical Society was fortunate enough to complete a project called Abolitionist and Me. In that project, we were able to contact homeowners of Underground Railroad sites around Trumbull County and get an inside view of the property. So we hired a videographer to come in and shoot the houses or the property. And then we worked with the local school district for local kids to read a script about that house, about the people who live there, about the stories related to the Underground Railroad and their significance to our community. The way you can find it is if you go to our website, trumbullcountyhistory.org, and you go to the Explore and Learn tab, and you scroll down, it'll be right there. It was a great project that we were really proud to complete as an organization. So if you're looking for more information about Center Brook Manor or any of the other Underground Railroad houses in Trumbull County, please visit our website. And with that, thank you very much for listening and have a great day.